hooked up some wires temporarily just to so I can use the power. The solar panels are just two 100-watt solar panels, so it's just to give me some power. This is not the actual final configuration. I'm going to go ahead and install the voltmeter and a fuse block so I can get some 12-volt power. Here's the fuse block shown in the previous video. I'm going to put it right about here. There we go. Okay, this is a 1-inch stainless steel screw, Phillips head. Good enough. The first circuit is just going to be a 1 amp fuse if I can find one. That's going to go in probably slot number 1 or number 4 here. And that's going to be to read the voltage right off of the circuit breaker. And in general, that's how I'm going to build this board. I'm going to have a voltmeter off a fuse right off the circuit breaker to tell me what the actual voltage at the panel is, or at least as close as I can get it. Next, I need a voltmeter and a way to connect it to the fuse block. And I'm going to use this piece of screen track, which is a leftover. I'm just going to repurpose, recycle it. I have a lot of this laying around, and I need to use it for something. I don't like wasting things. And now we're going to do some soldering. And in the background you can see I have a fan running, that's right there. And what this is a piece of cardboard. I'll just go ahead and pan up. It's just a piece of cardboard I wrapped into a tube, a square tube. I put a muffin fan in there, 12-volt fan. It's running at about 10 volts. And behind that I put a bunch of activated carbon. And I'll try to turn it around so you can see. It's just activated carbon. It's been folded up. You can feel the air coming out. And activated carbon is pretty easy to get. You can get all different kinds. And I do that because I do a lot of soldering. And breathing the fumes one time isn't going to kill you, but breathing it for years will. It can cause a lot of health problems. It's poisonous, and I use leaded solder. So just a little bit of information there about how important it is to get the fumes and the smoke out of your face. Don't let it go up in your face all the time. I'm going to use my gun-type soldering iron from Harbor Freight. I think it's about 30-40 watts. It's not super powerful, but I just use this as a quick and dirty soldering iron on my workbench. I have a better soldering iron on the way. I finally splurged and I bought a nice soldering iron. I hope it will turn out. It gets good reviews, we'll see. But I use this on my workbench all the time just for quick and dirty jobs because you can just pull the trigger and start working. And I'm going to solder, sort of half crimp and solder these connections for the voltmeter. Actually, this is massive overkill for a voltmeter. It draws like 20 milliamps, but I want everything to be neat and orderly and safe. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and start working on this. This is my helping hands. Had these for years. I'm going to use that to help hold the wires down while I solder them. Okay, so first I'm going to tin the leads on the voltmeter, and I'm going to leave the wires the way they are. These are the original wires that came with the voltmeter. I think I will put some hot glue in there to protect the connections because those are probably close to breaking if I move them too much. And I know I've been moving them quite a bit. I'll just tuck it in there for now. And these wires are really thin. I don't know what gauge this is, but it's super duper thin. Okay, you can see the smoke is being pulled towards my air filter or my fumes extraction system. And I'm turning the soldering iron on and off to regulate the temperature because it's massive overkill for these tiny little wires. I actually have it off right now. Let's get those tinned up. All right. Okay, I've got my pinchy pliers here, and the reason they're called that is because I've pinched myself so many times with these things, it's ridiculous, because I can never remember to keep my finger away, and they'll slip like that. And I'm using them to pinch down or crimp this spade terminal connection because it's just way too big. It's way too big. It was designed for a larger gauge wire. And just so you know, the stronger part of the pliers is right here, not right here. You get much more force here, but also you can smash your finger in there if you're not careful. So I've smashed this spade terminal connection down to... it's still a little too big, but it's better. I'm going to put the solder in there now. Maybe I'll try to crimp it down. I don't really like doing that with small wire. It's kind of pointless. It just crushes the connection and makes it look bad. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get this soldered up. And this is the positive wire on the voltmeter. So this is going to the distribution block or fuse block, and that's the positive side of the circuit. It's coming straight off the PV circuit breaker. I'm referring to the small solar panel. This is going to be a small solar array just for powering equipment in the workshop. I'm not referring to the big solar panels, which I haven't received yet. Okay, just put that in there. Yeah, it's good enough. And I'm going to put the rubber boot on there. Again, it's just complete overkill. It's too big for the wire, but these connectors came with the rubber boots, so I'm just going to go ahead and put them in there. It is what it is. Go ahead and put some extra solder in there. This tiny little wire, so much solder for this tiny little wire, but it is what it is. Got it really hot. It's going to take a while to cool off. And I'm going to try to get that little solder blob off. I don't like it to stick up like that. Another way to get rid of them is to use side cutters like this. But these are a little dangerous. You can hurt your eyes. The pieces will fly off. So I always cover my hand over it when I cut. Okay, so there's the massive overkill solder blob for just a little voltmeter. But that's how I'm going to do everything here. I'm going to try to do a good job and keep it as tight as possible. Let's see if we can get the rubber boot on. And it really needs a shot of hot glue right in there, so I might put some hot glue in later. Now the negative side is going to connect to the negative side of the solar, and I don't yet have a distribution block for the negative side. I've ordered them, but who knows when they'll be here. But I'm going to go ahead and jerry-rig something just to get me up and running. Now I'm just going to clean up this plastic track. And I might try to run this on my miter saw, I don't know. It's kind of rough. Yeah, it's a little crooked. It's probably not a big deal. I'm not going to worry about the... It's a little crooked, but really I'm just recycling plastic, and it didn't really cost me anything, so I'm not going to worry about it. That's good enough. So I'm just going to take some stainless steel screws, and I'm basically just going to put this right on the board. It's a little bit warped, but when I put the screws in, it'll straighten out. I guess I'll just put 2 screws or 3 screws right here in the middle. To mark where the screws are going to go, I'm just going to use this piece of DIN rail left over. I'm just going to scribe a mark that's more or less in the center line. It's not exactly at the center line, but it's close. Okay, I messed up the line a little bit. Yeah, that'll do. It's good enough. Now my favorite tool, the combo square, makes its appearance again. I'm going to use that to scribe a line here. That's where I'll have one screw, turn around 180 degrees, scribe another line. That'll give me 2 screws that are pretty much exactly the same distance apart on either side. And you can see the marks that I made. It's a crosshair there and a crosshair there. and a line going down the middle. It's very hard to see because I'm using a knife, but I can see it good enough to get the screw in there. Now I'm going to take my old nail, put it right on the center. Yep, just make a little dent. And the plastic is very soft, but you wouldn't know that with this nail not going into it. And I'm going to use a tiny drill bit. I don't know if this is going to work or not. I really need a drill press, but yeah, it's very soft. It goes right through. It's a little off. So how do you find the center of a piece like this? How would you get the hole straight in the middle? Or at least as much as humanly possible? And the answer is, once again, a combo square. This is one of my all-time favorite tools. I use it for everything. I do carpentry with it. I've been using it for years. So a trick that I like to use is I'll try to eyeball the center line. And I'll try to get as close as I can. Tighten down the square really good. Then you take your marking tool. Put the square on like you had it, where you eyeballed it. And just scribe a small line. Now you turn around 180 degrees, do the same thing. And of course this piece here is crooked, so it isn't going to be perfect, so I'm just doing it as a demonstration. Scribe another line. And as you can see, wonder of wonders, I eyeballed it to within less than a millimeter. Can you believe that? That line right there is actually the center line. I actually eyeballed almost exactly the exact center line, less than a millimeter of precision. Now normally it doesn't work out that way, and what you'll have is you'll have a little gap. And right between that little gap is your center line. It's a lot easier to find when you can see that little gap. And all you have to do is eyeball the center of that little gap. And I've done this for years with wood and metal and plastic, and it works pretty good. Now I'm going to drill out the small holes with a larger drill bit. I don't think a single piece of plastic screen track in the world ever got more detail and more working over than this one. Most people would have just thrown this away, but I'm recycling it into something useful. It's almost like a poor man's den rail if you think about it. If you can find a way to mount stuff to it. Alright, so there's the 3 holes. I might need some little washers or something. I'm going to use the stainless steel screws. I have some shorter ones somewhere I'm going to use instead of these longer ones. These are 1 inch. These are way too long. Massive overkill. I'm kind of a fastener nerd. I love screws, nuts, and bolts. And I collect different types of screws. Here's one kind I've collected. This is a wafer head or pan head self-tapping, I guess, sheet metal screw. However, I use them for everything. It's like a built-in washer. And I'm pretty sure these will go right into the plywood just fine, even though that's not what they're intended for. These are not intended for wood as far as I know. But I'm going to use them because they're black, they have a washer built in, and they happen to match the plastic pretty well. So now I'm going to go over to the power board and install this track, and hopefully get the voltmeter to light up. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Okay, now to lay out the voltmeter rail on the power board. I think I'm going to put it right about here. There'll be 2 or 3 voltmeters on here. I'm sure of that, maybe more. Or there could be other equipment on here. And I need to have it fairly close to the fuse block and circuit breakers. So I think that's where I'm going to put it. So I'm going to go ahead and drill the first hole. I'm just going to eyeball the alignment. There we go. I had to enlarge the hole slightly on the plastic rail. So there's a self-tapping panhead screw in wood. It seems to work just fine. I don't say it would drill the wood, so I did drill a pilot hole. But it seems to work okay, and it looks better than silver screws, in my opinion. A large square to straighten up the rail, instead of just relying on my eye. So I got it pretty straight. Now I just need to drill 2 more holes in the wood and put in 2 more screws. Okay, all 3 screws are in, and now I should be able to mount the voltmeter. Okay, here's the voltmeter. Okay, and I'm going to use slot number 1. There you go. Looks like the rubber boot is slipping up too far. Okay, now the negative side is not connected yet because I don't have the wire. And so this will need to go to the ground distribution. I will temporarily patch it in for now until I have all the wires and everything ready to go. Now I need to go from the positive side of the circuit breaker to the positive distribution block or fuse block. In order to do that, I'm going to use a ring terminal. This is a 14 to 16 gauge ring terminal. And I'm just going to use this with a short piece of red wire. This is a silicone jacketed, I believe. Or either that or it's very nice wire. It's very nice, high quality wire. It's pure copper. I don't know what gauge it is, but it's plenty thick enough for what I'm doing. Measured and found I need about this much wire. So I'm going to do a ring terminal to the wire. The other end will go in the circuit breaker, so it doesn't need termination. I'm just going to solder and tin it. Way too much solder on there, but I'm going to leave it. Yeah, that should be enough solder, I think. It's not going anywhere. Normally what I do is I try to completely cover in solder, but it's really not necessary. Next I have some heat shrink tubing. and that'll have the side effect of covering up some of the solder blobbing. Look a little bit better that way. It really doesn't matter how it looks, it's how it connects. And I'm really not running a lot of current through this connection, but I do want to make sure it's secure and will never pull free. So there's the heat shrink. Okay, so there's the wire. This is going to be used to get the fuse block energized. And I'm going to go ahead and install that on the board. And this distribution block has a lock washer and a nut on top of another nut. I'm just going to leave that nut on there. Put the lock washer on top. Put the nut back on. That'll be good for 3 to 5 amps. I don't see a problem. And I don't even know what gauge this wire is. I'm guessing it's 14 gauge or something like that. But it's pure copper and it's high quality. I believe it's US made, so I'm not concerned at all. Alright, there's my wire. Now I need to attach it to the positive side of the circuit breaker. And those other wires you see are temporary. This is not the final state of the power board. I'm just getting things energized so I can use the board. Okay, now we got the positive side in there. Now I'm going to check and make sure that the distribution block is energized. So, yep, 17.6 volts. That wire you see right here, this is another wire I've installed on the negative side of the circuit breaker. And this is a temporary thing just to get me connected to the negative side until I get my negative ground bus going. So I'm going to attach an alligator clip right here to the negative side. The other side is going to go to the negative side of the voltmeter, the other side of the alligator clip. It's going to clip that on temporarily. Now I need a fuse. All I can find right now is a 3 amp fuse. This is a 3 amp. Yeah, 3 amps is overkill, but I have some 1 amp fuses somewhere and I'll install those when I can. So what should happen is when I connect this fuse, the blue voltmeter should light up. And red is positive. This whole block is positive, so it should just turn on. And it comes on, 17.7 volts. And I can also put the cover on. Looks pretty neat. And first thing I need to do is to install a second fuse, probably right here, number 2, and run that power over to my workbench. So I'll have 12 volt solar power over at my workbench, and I can use that for charging various gadgets, solar generators, charge my cameras and phones and whatnot. That means it's now time to do away with this, I'm not sure what you call it, rat's nest or whatever it is. So that panel propped in the window has almost fallen several times. It's really time to retire that, use it like it was intended, and go ahead and have a proper solar circuit coming over to my workbench so I can charge everything. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that solar panel and that 2x4 propping it up, and the wire that's connected to it is going to come off fuse number 2, and that's going to head over to my workbench to provide solar power. The 20 watt solar panel has been removed from the window, which is good because now I have a little bit more light in here. And the wire that was connected to it was now placed on this distribution block temporarily, and this is to get power over to my workbench. The negative side is on this alligator clip you see in the lower right hand corner. It's clamping 2 wires together, and I'm going to put a 10 amp fuse. Let's go ahead and put that in there. That'll allow me to share electrical power over my workbench to charge all my gadgets. Once again, everything you see here is in a temporary state. I'm just patching it together. The final configuration will look pretty good, and everything should be secure. All the wires are going to be clamped. There's going to be conduit and wire management, and all of that is going to be in future videos. Right now I'm just trying to get some power going into the building from my 2 100 watt solar panels, and that way I can run my gadgets and do what I need to do while I wait for my bigger solar panels, which are somewhere on the road being transported here. Purchased this USB charging board, power board, and I put the black standoffs on there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug my solar panel straight into this 2.1 millimeter jack here. and I can use this for charging 4 USB devices at the same time. This is a pretty powerful board from what I've read on the specs, and it should be able to charge multiple cameras and phones and run lights at the same time, in theory. And the other end of that 10 amp fuse is coming out of this plug. Of course, I don't intend to run 10 amps through it. Let's go ahead and check the voltage that's coming out. And getting about 10 volts because I have another piece of equipment running, currently sharing that solar panel array. It's two 100-watt solar panels. It's cloudy and dark right now, so there's not much power. So now I'm going to take this plug and plug it right into the USB power board. Yep, power's right up. 10 volts is enough. And now I can charge my camera, which I'm recording with. Let me go ahead and hook that up. Plug it in, if I can. Okay, my camera, it just indicates that it's charging. My camera is actually a cell phone. And I should be able to charge other devices as well, even though there's not much sun. Two 100-watt panels is more than enough to charge multiple cell phones, even if it's cloudy and dark. Now, I don't know if it'll be able to run my new desk lamp, LED desk lamp that I showed in a prior video. But out of curiosity, I'm going to use this USB to 12-volt boost converter and just plug that in and see what happens. Maybe it'll work, maybe it doesn't. I'm also running other equipment at the same time, so really I'm trying to do 3 things here, and it's dark and cloudy. And let's see if I can get it to come on. It actually came on. Wow. Now I have lots of light. Let's dim it down. Okay, it's on, it's running. I had to dim it down, but it's enough even in cloudy weather to give me a lot more light. That's a whole lot more light than I had before. So all of this stuff is running straight off of solar. There's no batteries, no charge controller, no inverter. It's just straight solar coming right out of this plug right here. And I'm charging my camera phone. I'm running this desk lamp, which you can see right there. I bent it down. And I'm also running one other piece of equipment all at the same time. Although I'm pushing it a bit, I could probably plug something small in, but that's probably about all I can get out of those 2 panels when it's dark and cloudy. I like pushing the envelope and seeing how far my equipment will go. So I'm now trying to charge another phone. You can see it right here in the lower left-hand corner with a magnetic USB coupling on it. So that phone there is charging. The camera that I'm filming with is charging, which is actually a cell phone. I'm using a camera phone. And I'm running this desk lamp through a 12-volt USB DC boost converter on low. And I'm running another piece of equipment that's somewhere else in the workshop. All of that is running off of 2 100-watt solar panels that are in cloudy, dark conditions. However, I've approached the end of what the solar panels can do because they're now pulled down to 6 volts. And my guess is at that plug there, it's lower than 6 volts. So it's an interesting experiment. I would like to plug more in and see what happens. How about this charger here? This is a magnetic AA or 18650 charger that runs off USB. I seriously doubt this is going to work with all this stuff in here. It's probably going to crash the DC converters on there. Okay. Well, the lights are still on. Let's try hooking a battery up and see what happens. And it's actually charging. So even though I dragged the panels down to 6 volts, I'm running 5 different things simultaneously off one solar panel over a very long piece of thin wire as well, which has a lot of resistance in it. So interesting. This is how I set up all my workbenches. I have solar power running right to the workbench, usually multiple sources of it, and I run everything off of solar. Often I run my lights for the camera and everything off of solar. In fact, a lot of the lights that you see are running off of solar power. They're not running off the grid. If the grid were to go down, I would just keep right on going like nothing happened. The footage is pretty grainy, but I'm just zooming in using digital zoom to show you the power board running. It has 4 separate channels, and I've noticed if it crashes, they'll start flickering. But right now, there's no flickering at all. And this AA battery that I showed you earlier is still charging. There it is right there. I assume it is. Let me take it off a minute. Yep, it was charging. So the light went out. When I put it back on, the light comes back on, indicating that it is charging. You see the red light? That means it's charging. And my phones and devices all indicate that they're charging. So I'm really pushing the solar panels hard. but it's still working. I disconnected the AA battery charger because it was causing the lights and everything I had plugged in to flicker. And I also disconnected my other cell phone, which was pretty much full anyway. Now let's go over and see what the voltage is at the solar panel end on the other side of the really, really long thin wire. And we have 9.44 volts. And at the other end of the long skinny wire to my workbench, I guarantee you it's not 9.44 volts, it's probably less. But it's still enough to charge multiple devices and run lights. Okay, I have to cut the video off here because it would just be incredibly long if I didn't. This video series is intended to show a lot of hands-on application of skills, to add a little bit of learning and knowledge to it. And it's not intended to be a quick fix or a soundbite, so they will be pretty long and detailed. In the next video, I'm going to install some additional equipment that will be used to support a project that's in the early stages. It's going to make a big difference in the workshop. That's a separate video, separate series. It's also going to include the installation of an inverter, possibly 2 inverters, and some additional cable, wire management stuff. I have some wire clamps I need to install. Generally speaking, you want all the wires to be secured so they cannot move. Right now, it's just kind of hanging there, and that's not the final state of this board. I have several of these boards I've built over the years. This particular one is going to be specific to this workshop. It is going to have a battery shelf at some point, or 2 shelves maybe, and there will be an additional power board to the side of it. Those are later on down the road. This one here is going to run all the electronics in the workshop and handle all the lighting and probably security equipment and just anything else that I need to have in here. So I have one central location to control everything and monitor everything. I hope this video was useful or helped someone. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.